Welcome to Influential Entrepreneurs, bringing you interviews with elite business leaders and experts, sharing tips and strategies for elevating your business to the next level. Here's your host, Mike Saunders.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Influential Entrepreneurs. This is Mike Saunders, the Authority Positioning Coach. Today we have back with us Michelle Moore, who's the founder and retirement specialist with Moore Family Wealth, and we'll be talking about building your retirement paycheck, creating income you can count on. Michelle, welcome back to the program.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks for having me.
You are welcome. I always love talking about that retirement paycheck. And it's like, hold on, I retired. I don't get a paycheck, but you got to live and got to pay the bills still. So I love how you phrase the retirement paycheck and creating that income you count on. So when you're working with your clients, how do you help them move from, I hope I've saved enough in retirement to I'm confident that I've saved enough for retirement?
Yeah, I think that's such an awesome question and one that I hear many times every day. And we do have a paycheck. We're just not working 9 to 5 for our paycheck. But yeah, we absolutely will continue to have bills, minimally taxes, minimally groceries, right? There are things that we'll need and want to do in retirement. And so some ways that we structure that retirement income is through anything that we've spent our previous 50 or 60 years putting together. So some folks, it may be Social Security. Some folks, it may be in the stock market or an IRA or a mutual fund. But what I like to do is look at all those different pots of money and determine where is there pre-tax accounts, where's there's tax deferred accounts, where are those tax advantaged accounts, and how do we position those to give you regular monthly income to not only meet your monthly needs, but to exceed that so you can continue to do all the things that you hope to do during retirement.
And that, what you just said there makes me realize you need to know that number to shoot toward. In other words, how do you meet or exceed what you need? Well, I need to sit down and go, this is what I need for retirement. And I would venture to say that you become almost like a life coach of sorts to say, hey, what does retirement look like to you and feel like to you? And how often are you going to travel? Do you want to, start a side business or a nonprofit or visit the grandkids? So, what do you do to help your clients realize kind of a really dialed in number of what they actually will need to be planning for?
So it does start with that one-to-one and that heartfelt discussion, whether you have a lot of money or a little bit of money. So I was working with a woman just last week who was an amazing saver, had a great job, made some really smart investments, was about a year or two away from retirement and had lots of money in the stock market, had some money in an IRA, and was just terrified. She had about almost $3 million in those accounts. And she was terrified that she still didn't have enough and didn't think she'd be able to retire. And so she was really looking for some advice on, do I have enough or not? Because she had seen her parents really struggle, ended up in assisted living, not have a real solid plan in place. And so was able to look at those pots of money and talk about how the stock market goes up and down, which caused that uncertainty, that anxiety, that stress, and helped her move some of her money into an account that has a fixed guaranteed income. So she knew that money would be predictable for the rest of her life and she would never lose a penny. And so when I sat with her and she was, I think she was an accountant. And so she was very smart with money. And she looked at me like, what are you even talking about? I've never heard of this option. How can this be? And so we dug deeper into fixed indexed annuities and how they do exactly that. They provide guaranteed income for life without touching that principal and really giving you that security. And so in her case, we looked at those numbers. We figured out what her current monthly amount was, how to more than match that, and how much money she would still have left over. And she's now looking at starting a dog park. She's passionate about animals, and she wants to start this dog park for pets in her home community and is talking about working with the city to have something made for her with a flower garden
Mm,
that's for her mother, right? Based on her
neat.
mother's name as well. So it's this really beautiful story of a woman who was so anxious and stressed and worried. Have a conversation, look at those numbers, and now is so excited not only that her children and grandchildren will be taken care of, but that she has enough to give back to her community and honor her mother.
I love it. And probably if she was thinking of doing that during her working years, she would be kind of heads down, nose to the grindstone, getting things done. But now this has kind of given her a little bit of a new perspective. So I think that is
Absolutely.
really neat. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So,
Yeah.
so I think it's really important to think about things like when a couple of the words that you mentioned jumped out at me, guaranteed income.
Yeah.
I mean, not many things in life are guaranteed,
That's true.
and can never lose money. And not many things in life are guaranteed to not lose money, but having financial tools out there that you don't need to worry about those swings from market volatility and watching the news or getting your portfolio statement going, oh, look, your retirement savings just took this huge drop.
Yeah.
That becomes a really huge way to increase that peace of mind, right? I mean, this is something
Huge.
that, um, I think kind of getting back to our previous conversation we had about retirement mindsets, most people think I have this much money, I put it in the market and we hope for the best because I trust my person. But in reality, the market might be a little bit too volatile during retirement years for some.
Yes.
And putting it into products like what you're mentioning, boy, what talk about like lowering your blood pressure, literally, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I see it every day. And one of the phrases that I use is zero is the hero. And so
Yeah.
with the products that I'm looking at, and lots of other folks do as well, that fixed indexed annuity and annuities in the past have had a bad rap. And that's in part of how they were structured, looking at variable terms where they would still go up and down, or maybe they would have a really fixed interest rate with some fees that were very low. And we don't use those with my company. Those are not products that we use. We don't look at products that have fees. And
Mm,
so that zero is a hero refers to when the stock market goes down, your product doesn't go down. So there'll be a guaranteed floor where the worst you can do is zero, even if the market
mhm.
tanks. The follow-up question is always, but how does that work? What do you
Yeah.
mean? And so I use the analogy of those who've purchased a house. You go to buy a house, you fall in love with it, you give someone your earnest money and say, this is the house for me. But then you have the inspection and you find out that the foundation is bad and the plumbing is bad and the wiring is bad. And you say, just kidding, please, I want my earnest money back. And you
Yeah.
carry on, right? And so there's the ability to do that exact same thing in the stock market with options. And so companies purchase options. And as the stock market goes up and down at the end of that term, if it did well, they say, yes, this was fantastic. Let it be. But if it didn't perform, they say, please money back, just like that
Mhm.
escrow account. And that zero floor is then passed on to you, the consumer. So there's no loss.
And the beautiful thing with all of that, I'm assuming, is you don't need to even know how to spell the word options because it's all being done behind the scenes.
Thank goodness.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But it's
Just
just nice to
don't
know how it
confuse me with
works.
the facts. Just tell me I can never lose money and it's guaranteed. Thank you.
Absolutely. And what folks don't realize is, let's say you've got 4 quarters, right? We can visualize 4 quarters. If the market loses 50%, which has happened a few times, right? When the market crashed during COVID, when the market
Mhm.
crashed, was it in the 90s with the mortgage? It happens, right? So you, instead of having 4 quarters, it goes down, you lose 2 quarters, right? So you've only got two of your four
Mhm.
quarters. Now, if you listen to some financial people and say it's fantastic, the market has now recovered that 50%. You might initially think, I lost 50, I gained 50, I'm back to zero. But if you think about it, 50% of that 2 quarters is only adding a third quarter. You're only back to 75 cents. So the
Mm.
market actually needs to double in order to get back to zero. So not having any of those losses puts
Yeah.
you so much further ahead in the investment game.
I've heard that example before, and I think I've even seen like an Excel file with some charts and things saying exactly, because people think, oh, I lost this, I just need to gain it, right? No, it's like if you lost that, you need to gain more to get back to ground zero. And then all of a sudden now you're behind the eight ball. And it makes me think that if someone really wanted to get back to ground zero and get back on track, they may be tempted to take a little bit more risk than would be, advisable. And now
Yeah.
you are at risk of losing it even worse. So having that, okay. So I'm an analogy guy. It reminds me of the tortoise and the hare. I
Yeah.
don't care if the rabbit sprints forward, he gets tired, distracted, but the tortoise steady plodding wins.
Exactly. And that's the beauty of that fixed indexed annuity product
Mm.
that so many of my families absolutely love.
So, what are the key components of this successful retirement plan? Like, how do you interweave things like the annuity and Social Security and tax strategy, things like that? Because obviously, that question or that point is a weekend long seminar, concept. But from a 30,000-foot view, how should we be viewing those components?
Yeah, so I think you can read and you can educate, but really speaking with people who do it every day is going to be your best bet, right? And
Hmm.
so your financial planner, your tax advisor, and someone who specializes in retirement, like myself, who can look at those other products as well, because not all products are well known. So I think we talked
Hmm.
about the 401k earlier. And
Hmm.
so again, when you're just looking at that product, you're not aware of maybe some of the tax disadvantages that after retirement, your taxes may actually go up. And so you may not be prepared for that, right? And people are, what? My taxes go up. Well, yeah, they very well could. And especially when you hit age 73 and you're at what's called required minimum distributions, where
Mm.
you're required to start taking money out of your accounts. Very well, if you're not planning and have it on your radar, push you into that next tax bracket and cause some serious problems.
It's those things that you don't know about that can really punch those holes in the retirement bucket, so to speak. And if you have someone watching out for you from the holistic 360-degree view or 30,000-foot view, now it's like, hold on. That makes sense in this aspect, but when you get to this age and this triggers, then we need to take into consideration taxes. And it's like, oh, wow. And so a
Yeah.
lot of times I think people are like, I think that's a, like an old wives' tale, like, oh, in retirement, you'll be in a lower tax bracket. Really? We don't know that.
Negative. Yeah.
We literally don't know it because things change all the time. But probably if we were to stop 100 people on the street and say, do you think taxes are going to go up in the future? Everyone would say yes, because we see what the deficit is. We see government spending. We know that the only way they can tame all of that mess is raise taxes, and that's on the backs of us. So if we have that uncertainty where we don't know what taxes are going to do, boy, we better put a plan into place to at least be ready for that, or have some of our money in some tax favored kind of strategy so that it doesn't hit us as hard, right?
Absolutely. And a beautiful one, a couple that I like, depending on your age and your health and lots of other factors. Certainly, Roth has been used for lots of folks, right? That Roth IRA, which has some nice
Hmm.
tax benefits. But another product that I never knew about until after my husband passed and I started learning more and got into the financial field of helping folks is something called an IUL, an Indexed
Mm.
Universal Life Policy. And so with this policy, it's also protected from some taxes because it's a life insurance product, but it has a cash value benefit. So you're still able to take some money out without that tax burden because you pay taxes going in, you don't pay when it comes out.
Huge. And you've mentioned several things throughout our conversation, like the IUL and annuities, and I think that people need to realize that, oh, that sounds really good, that particular one. I'm going to take all my money and put it in that one thing. No, right? And oh, she said this and this and this, so that works for everybody. No. So these are just things that, to your point, you didn't realize until you had to educate yourself. You discovered them. polished and fine tuned them for people, but it's a whole different combination. It's kind of like having a recipe and, combining the ingredients to make a whole different outcome for each and every person. So I think people listening to this should go, yeah, that makes some sense. Please guide me. Let me know what some of my options are. So let's think about this. We hear retirement planning and saving, like I need X number of dollars so that when I get X age, then I'm going to have some money to live in retirement. So what's the difference between saving for retirement and planning for income in retirement?
Yeah, so saving is excellent when we're younger, and that's what we do. But if we don't have that plan in place, maybe we are. I know you like analogies, Mike, so I'm going to give you another one. We talk about farmers, right? Or those of us who've had gardens. Would we rather pay money on the seed, the tiny seeds, or the harvest after it grows? Which are we going to pay more tax on? And of course, we know that harvest.
Hmm.
And so even as we're saving for retirement in our younger years, if all of our money is going in that pre-tax bucket, when we take it out in retirement, we're going to get really hammered. We're going to really struggle with taxes because we didn't invest it right in the beginning.
Hmm.
And so that's one of the pitfalls that I see with a lot of folks is not sure how to shuffle some of that money between those buckets so that they're planning for that tax and those tax-free withdrawals as they have more birthdays.
Yeah, huge, huge. And it all just gets down to planning and when should we start planning as early as humanly possible, right? So what
Absolutely.
advice would you give some women who still have 401ks, pensions, and don't
Oh,
really know how to turn all of that into some steady, reliable, guaranteed income?
yeah, I think that you want to find someone you know and like and trust
Hmm.
because all of these tools can be fantastic if they're set up correctly. But not everyone knows how to set them up correctly, right? And so doing your due diligence and who is out there and who is reputable and really making sure that they have your best interest at heart.
Mm,
One of the things that I've seen with so many of my families is that they'll go to a big name advisor and they won't recognize how much even a 1 or 2 or 3% fee really tax their retirement funds. And
yeah.
so when I show them graphs of, yes, they were helpful and did amazing work, but let's look at this 1 or 2 or 3%. And over the course of your 30 years of investing, instead of having $1.2 million, dollars, now you're at 600,000 because of maybe a 3% fee that you
Yeah.
were giving someone. It's like my telephone bill, right? It's like we're going to give you this cheap cell phone bill, but then we add this fee and this fee and this fee, and by the time you get it, it's literally double. And you go, what the heck was that, right? Same
It's
thing with
interesting that, when you get your statement and it says, oh, hey, last quarter, your rate of return was X, whatever the percent was. And it's like, oh, that's pretty good. But then when you start looking at fee, then it's like effectively that rate is not what it showed. It's down at the lower amount because money was taken out.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Mm,
And so that's another thing that so many folks don't realize. And again, particularly with some of the big named financial companies, that's how they generate their money, right? That's how they
sure.
do advertising and make sure
Yeah.
that everyone's well paid. And just again, not that they don't do great work, but to be mindful that is their strategy and
Their
how it
MO.
may impact your bottom
And
line.
anyone could do that, but be mindful of that with whoever you talk to. But someone like yourself who is an independent, you've got some flexibility with the types of products. So like the big name people you see on TV or radio, they may be limited to certain products because they only offer this and that in a small handful. So
All the
there's some
time.
some big, good benefits that come with working with an individual independent. And then you are sitting there pointing out and going, look at the fees, none. Look at the fees that I'm charging you, zero. So being able to go in eyes wide open is got to be a huge opportunity in checking things out.
Absolutely. And I, as you alluded to, I probably have contracts with 30 different companies, and I have no loyalty to any one company. It's
Yeah.
which is going to be best for
Yeah.
my client. And then you said something under that. I'm like analogies, right? And so another analogy is I go into that big named retirement planning store and I use like, I'm starving. I'm so hungry. I know I need something to eat. So I go into McDonald's and I say, give me your best meal. And they give me my quarter pounder, right? It's the very best
Yeah.
that they can do at McDonald's, which is true.
Yeah.
But is McDonald's the best restaurant in town?
Right.
Maybe not, right?
Right.
So
Right.
what
Right.
else
Right.
is there? And it's not advertised, right? Golden Arches, they're everywhere.
Yep.
But
They're not going to tell you, oh, this is our best, but really down the road, you could go down here and get something more nutritious or cost effective. They're just saying, they're processing orders. You walked in, you placed an order, they said here.
exactly.
Yeah.
So again, being mindful of the pros, but also the limitations and
Yeah.
why sometimes that independent advisor might be a better option.
To at least present a wide variety of options that might fit based on what you're looking for so that you can talk it through and not feeling pushed and, crammed into this one decision. So that's a really big piece. So
Right.
Michelle, this has been so helpful talking through some of these concepts. If someone is interested in getting some of that unbiased advice, what's the best way they can reach out and connect with you?
I would love to speak with anyone who's interested in learning more. I would love to help. And probably the best way to do that is to book an appointment with me through my website. And that is my last name, Moore, Moore. So it's morefamilywealth.com. And as Mike was saying, my consultation is always free. So there's no fee for anything that I do for you.
Excellent. Well, Michelle, thank you so much for coming back on. It's been a real pleasure chatting with you.
Thank you, Mike. Talk soon.
You've been listening to Influential Entrepreneurs with Mike Saunders. To learn more about the resources mentioned on today's show or listen to past episodes, visit www.influentialentrepreneursradio.com.